Hello, my name is Robert Pacilli. For my final project, I'll be analyzing a real-world problem and giving questions about the nature of a people's and how and what direction are we moving. For the video, I'm basing my claim and also my analyzation off of a retired U.S. Army general and also Barbara F. Walters. They discuss how our nation is and also if civil conflict is possible in the near future. The big things I want to point out in this is the political divisions, the morals of a nation we are. Is it actually possible for us to go to a modern day civil war? Which may seem like a silly question, but in recent years does seem scary, very scary, the reality of the situation we're in. And then I would like to end it with asking a question. So to start, I would like to identify my argument. The origins, as I said, came from the video of the U.S. Army retired general and then also Barbara F. Walters. I found out of these two, Barbara F. Walters, to be most insightful. She worked for the CIA on a task force that identified foreign civil wars. In her claim, in her TED Talk, she speaks on how we would analyze other countries, and the most likely for them is if they were a democracy that wasn't really a democracy. So it was right in that in-between where votes didn't really seem realistic and, it wasn't a dictatorship, it wasn't a democracy. And some Americans would say that's where we're at, right? Because many of us don't feel like our votes truly matter anymore. And that's a very scary reality. The U.S. Army general, his claim was seeing the political tension. He looked at it straight from a military point of view. With more political attacks rising, then it's a given that it's going to happen. Barbara F. Walters does not believe that it is going to happen. And her leaning is much more to the left ideals, and the generals is much more to the right ideals. These are just two sources that I'm listing right now. My personal argument is I do not believe that there will be a civil war. That is my bias. I think that is a interesting question, more on a matter of a social construct on how, in general, as a people's, which direction are we moving and how are we going to answer and solve problems in the future. But to start, the political violence, we've seen rises from January 6th. We've seen it from Charlie Kirk. We've seen it from the riots in 2020 after the George Floyd killing. We've seen the almost assassination of Trump. Time and time once again, it feels like it just piles on with the political divisions, right? And that goes into, is that how we are going to answer things going forward, right? You look at other nations in the past and even ourselves back in the 1850s, when things weren't going our way politically and we answered it with violence, for us, it always ended with that. Even our revolution, when we were being taxed for our representation, we tried it diplomatically, and then we went towards violence. So as a people, have we grown past that? I feel like that's a really interesting question that we have to ask. I personally think that maybe with political, aggravated attacks and things of the sort, I don't think we're past that. But I don't think that us heading towards a full-blown, the geography is not there. It's also, I don't think people nowadays have the gall to want to pick up a firearm and go to carry this out. Something of this sort would be something like, there's no organization. I think that's the biggest defense against it. I think the two groups definitely hate each other, but I think the most worrying thing for me when it comes to political division and especially political violence is, will we ever come back together, right? Because if you look at someone that lives in rural North Carolina and you look at someone that lives in, let's say, Charlotte, North Carolina, how are they even similar? They may live under one roof, one nation, but are they really one people? I'm sure those morals and the way they see the world is so radically different that how can you really tell the two that are in the same nation, the same pot? I think that's another scary question, right? Our country's so massive, and thank God it is, but how is a Californian, anything like a North Carolinian? That's a very realistic thought. But One moment, I have to slide down my notes. I apologize. Yes. So finally, though, the summary of my claim is political, however we devised. Will we recover? And then what is the evidence for something to go larger? So I would like to, before I continue on, hit on will it go larger? I think they will not, but many would say they will. Recent polls show, I think it's 49%, if I'm not mistaken, of Americans believe that there's a good chance. You can look that up. It's very scary. I would encourage you to. I think the only possible way of it going that way is if there's a massive attack or there's an assassination on a large enough person that could push people that way. I think that it would take not militias doing it, but I think it would take a governor or something of the sort seceding from the Union, which I don't think is very likely. I think the only realistic thing that we could call a civil war that we could possibly see in America is maybe something like the Irish Civil War with the British, where they carried out bombings, the IRA. I think that's the only thing that would be close to what we could possibly experience. And that would be on the extreme. How to prepare for this? Be knowledgeable. I think that's the biggest thing. If you're not knowledgeable, you won't know how to do. I have to wrap up, though, although I could easily talk for this for a while. I just think, in general, the historical basis is definitely there. You can look in our past with, us and other nations. We are very similar. History echoes itself. I think that, in general, though, we as people, we just need to come together.